So it's well time that we finish this top 100 series, and I'm currently on game 20 to 11. Now, before I get into that, last week my friend came over with her couple kids, and her oldest case is, he calls me my top Melanie, which means Auntie Melanie, even though we're not related. I've just been around his whole life. It's been neat. This is the first time they came to my house here and got to see the game room. And then he came in here and then got to see my little recording area and then the lights behind me. And he was so impressed. And then I was telling him about my YouTube videos and my channel. So he got watching a bunch of my videos. So he's like my newest, biggest fan. And I told him that next video I would give him a shout out. So hi Case, I hope you get to watch this one. So let's get started then. So in the number 20 position is the game In the Hall of the Mountain King. I played this one the first time in 2018 when it had was it, yeah, like maybe not 2018, it just says so it must have been in 2019. Yeah, that makes sense. In early 2019, and then a friend of mine brought it over and we played it, and it was so neat. And then my friend Carla brought it over and then we played it again quite a while afterwards, and then we played it in teams, which had a kind of a very different feel to it. I actually don't own this game. This is one that is on my wish list. If I ever come across it, I definitely want to add it to my collection because it is so cool. And you kind of start, you have this map that you have in the middle, and you start on the edge and you dig and you put these tiles to show where the areas you're digging on, and what you cover will kind of give you different things. And then as you dig closer to the middle, it's going to be worth more points because you're kind of getting deeper in the core, but it's not as easy to get to that either. But you score every tunnels you kind of add to it, and then you kind of move through this area as well. And then the area or the resource management is really neat as well, because you start with the pyramid cards, and then as you take off or add to it and then what's available, it's just a very neat, interesting game, and I'm doing a terrible job explaining it, but that was my number 20. In number 19 position, this game is Alma Mater. I bought this one at a deep discount. I was gonna buy it secondhand, and somebody's like, it is on sale, and I think I bought it for $19 or something like that. So just first of all, the components are amazing. There is ton of these little plastic books, because this is a game about running a university. It's a worker placement game, and you have all these areas you can go to where you're getting students, different actions you can do, but then there's this whole area where you're hiring professors. And the first person to go there will get to dictate the price of the professors, and then you have to use books and so you assign the book that it's going to cost to bring them on to your university. And the books are kind of tricky to get to because you got to buy the books from each other. So I created a certain colored books and the other players create a certain colored books. And in order to be able to get those, you need to go onto their location and acquire the books, which gives them the money. And then you have these encyclopedia books, which are the yellow books that are harder to get because they're created in the board itself. It's just a very neat game. There's tons going on with it, but it's not it didn't strike me as a very hard, complicated game. It's not entry level, definitely. The theme is super cool. The components are beautiful, and you have the player board where you're adding different cards up and down, and as you add things to it. It was just a really neat, fun game. And the theme is beautiful and the components were amazing. So that was Alma Mater, my number 19. In number 18 position, I have Thebes. I can't remember how I came across Thebes and how I got it, but I purchased this game quite a long time ago. Well, I got into the hobby in 2017, so it was sometime after 2017, but it was fairly early on that I had acquired this one. And this is just such a fun and neat game. it's like Indiana Jones archaeology side of it without like the action side of it. So you start in Europe and you're going to visit these different locations to acquire knowledge on these different dig sites. Then once you've acquired enough knowledge, you're going to go to the dig site and you're going to perform a dig. So and then you have this disc that'll indicate, say, okay, so how many knowledge do you have? You'd be like, well, I have 5 knowledge. And then how many weeks are you going to dig for? Because the more knowledge you have, the more likely you know where to dig. And the longer you dig, the more likely you are to find stuff, right? So then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to dig for 6 weeks. And they'll be like, okay, so you get to pull 4 tokens out of the bag. And you have this bag for each dig site that'll have some artifacts in it and has sand. So you go in and you pull the tokens, and maybe it's mostly sand, but you get 1 artifact, so then you add that to your collection, and the sand goes back in the bag. So next person that comes in, there's a lot more sand to artifact ratio. And then second year that you go back to this site, hopefully you've acquired more knowledge, so you get to pull more out, but there's a lot more sand to artifact ratio then, so it's kind of makes it less likely that you're gonna pull stuff out. It's so neat, and you can't dig at the same site twice in the same year because you only have a permit to go there once. So you're acquiring the knowledge, trying to get yourself so that you're gonna accomplish the most when you go to the dig site. Then you kind of decide how long you're gonna spend there. But the time is also the mechanism that decides when your turn comes again. So if you spend 6 weeks, then you're gonna move your token 6 space along the outside, and then it's whoever's in the last position goes next. So if you've gone too far ahead, the other players are going to get to do multiple things before you get to go. And then like traveling each from one city to the next takes a week. And then if you're acquiring knowledge, well, the time that you spend to study the knowledge you're learning will take time as well. So it is such a neat thematic game with like pulling the things out of the bag and having more sand than artifacts as things gets discovered. It's so satisfying. This, I mean, it's an older one. This was published in 2007, but it is so good. And everybody I've played with kind of was like, oh, okay, I want my own copy, and it's been very difficult to find. But so if you come across this one to play or to purchase, I highly recommend it. Thebes is amazing, and that's my number 18. In number 17 position, I have Terra Mystica. So I set up the game one day, and then I called a couple friends to come over, and then the one friend had played it before. I was like, great, would you teach it? And he's like, yeah, sure, sounds great. And then he comes over and he's like, I had this game, I think I sold it. And I was like, yeah, you did, this is it, this is your copy, you sold it to me. And this game is so neat. It reminded me a lot of Catan. It has like a Catan taken to the next level feel to it because you have the map, and each like you play as a different faction, and your faction requires your locations to be of a certain type of elements or kind of environment. So on my board, you'll notice my environment needed that dark gray. So you start on a dark gray location, then you can spread out. So if I wanted to spread out to the yellow location, then I would need to convert this yellow location into the dark gray environment so that I can build there, because I need it to have the environment that I thrive in. And depending on how much of a different, because you see on the player board, there's like a wheel with all the different elements that kind of shows. I was like, okay, well, I have to convert it 2 times to take the yellow to the black. Now, if it was a red, then I'd have to convert that 4 times. So it's, do I really want to build there? Maybe I should go the other way. Like, it kind of has that feel, the Catan feel with the spreading out and the building, but then you have the, where you have to convert the environment to make sure that you can build there. Is kind of really interesting. And you're building these different things. So on your board, you have all the little, I think they're temples that you can build. Like, so it goes like temple, cathedral, or whatever. So it builds up. So you start with the 1, and then you can upgrade it to the next level. So very much like a 10 as well. And then when you upgrade it though, so you kind of take the little building, you put it back on your board, and take the bigger building and you put it onto the main board. And what on your player board is revealed, it kind of shows what you collect each income phase. So the more little building that's out, it's like, okay, well, I get to collect all of this. But now that I swapped it out, it covers, I don't get to collect as much of this, but I collect this as well now. And so having the most stuff on the map off of your board kind of gives you more resources you get to collect each round. And then there's a magic element to it, and you have these three purple location with the purple discs, and these are like, I guess, magic that you'll be able to spend to accomplish things, but you need to upgrade the disc. And what's interesting is if it's in the third location, that's where like spent magic goes to. So if you're going to upgrade magic, you got to start with what's in that third location and move it into the second location. And once you've upgrading things that's in the second location to the active magic thing, so now those are available for magic, and you want to try to upgrade and have the most in there, because then once you use it and you spend it, it goes into the third location again, so it kind of shifts back up. And then if you upgrade to get more magic, you have to upgrade the third into the second. You can't move the things from the second to the first location so that it's actually ready. So it has a really interesting manipulation there, and you want to try to make sure that you've upgraded the most magic before you start spending it, because then when you upgrade, you're not gonna be able to upgrade from the second location. You have to upgrade what's in the third location. This was just such a neat, satisfying game to play. Each round, it just felt like you accomplished a lot. Like, and I've played also the Gaia Project, which is more like a space theme of this game. So otherwise the gameplay is almost identical. The track, there's a track where you can kind of go up and accomplish different things. That's a slightly different from this game to the Gaia Project. In the Gaia Project, I think everybody gets their own track. Well, in this one, it's like everybody's on the same track. But other than that, it's very, very similar. Personally, I prefer the Terra Mystica. I found the spreading on the map with the space map was a lot more difficult. But each round that you take and you use, it just felt like I accomplished a lot. With the Gaia Project one, I lost by over 100 points. So I wasn't accomplishing enough, but it felt like I was. So it was still a very satisfying game to play. This one, like I said, the theme just seems to match better. It was just so neat to kind of see the different things you can accomplish, and there's just a lot that you can do, and then you do a lot on your turn, so it's just each turn feels very satisfying. And that's my number 17, Terra Mystica. In number 16 position, I have Keyflower. So this was gifted to me by my brother. It was my first game from the Key series. I've since acquired Key Market, Key Harvest, Keeper. No, I want Keeper. I don't have it yet. Do I have Keeper? I don't have Key Flow. Maybe I have Keeper. But there's a few more that I want to get from the Key series. This one probably is still my favorite. When I did this list, I hadn't played any of the other ones yet. This one is so unique. It is so interesting in the bidding mechanism. Because the way that it works, each season you have new tiles that comes out and gets put in the middle. And these are the tiles that we're going to bid on. And you have, it's 6-sided tile. So the tile that faces you is the tile that you get to bid on. So that's how you can tell which ones are your bid, because we all bid with meeples. And the meeples comes in different colors. So if I bid one red meeple on a tile and somebody wants to outbid me to get that tile, they would have to bid 2 red meeples. So they would put 2 red meeples on the side of the tile that faces their spot at the table. And that's how we know, is like, hey, well, I bid this one because that's on my side. This is on your side. You outbid me. So then on my turn, I can take my 1 meeple, or I could add more meeple to try to outbid him. I'm going to add 2 more red meeples so I can outbid him. But do I have 2 red meeples? It kind of depends on what I have in behind my little shield available to bid. So in this case, if you look, I only have 1 red meeple. So it would be better off if I had bid on yellow. So I can't outbid, but you can always take the meeple and put it onto the tile and activate the action of the tile, and different tiles will kind of give you resources. So if you activate a tile that's in the middle, the resources land on your village, kind of your main village location. If you've gained the tile gets added to your village and you want to activate it, then you got to put the meeple onto your village. Whatever activate ends up on that particular tile. So it's really interesting with the resource management, because you're acquiring these resources, trying to relocate them to the proper tile so you can upgrade the tile, because an upgraded tile is worth more points. And then you're bidding on all of these tile, or you're utilizing these tiles, and you've got all these different colored meeples, with is how you activate, well, which is kind of dictates on what you can bid or cannot bid. It's just very satisfying. It's so fun. There's a lot going on with this one. There's a lot of things to consider. So I found AP was a big problem, and then the bigger player count you have, and everybody takes turn, kind of figuring out their turn, and it can take a while to play. But it's so good. And I found with me is like if the person before me took too long, I kind of like zoned out a bit, and then it'd be my turn and I'm not realizing it, just stretching the game that much longer. So, but it's an amazing game. It is so fun. It is so unique with that color meeple bidding mechanism. I love it. That's my number 16 Keyflower. Then in the number 15 position, I have Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. I haven't played Gloomhaven because we're still going through this one before we kind of go to the Gloomhaven, but I do own Gloomhaven as well. This one, I guess the benefit of this one over the regular Gloomhaven is all the scenarios are in a map book, and you just open the book on the map you're on, add a few tokens, and you're good to go. With Gloomhaven, you have all these different components that you got to put together, so setup is a lot more intensive from what I understand. This one is a table hog. Like, there's a lot to set up. There's like, it just takes up a lot of space. So be prepared for that. And this just barely fits in the box. Once you've got it all organized and you're trying to put everything in the box, it just barely fits in there. And this is a campaign game. So you're going through all these different scenarios, making it through the scenario to go to the next one, and so on. So I've been playing this one with just Lee. Because you want to be careful if you get going playing with friends. How easy is it to schedule time for you guys to get together? And then when you do get together, are you sure you want to play Gloomhaven? And they're not going to be like, oh, well, let's play something different. Because you need to have the same players that goes through, because your character upgrades. Like there's... So with those type of scenario campaign game, I like to play it with just Lee. And even then, there's a lot of time me and Lee will sit down and I'm like, oh no, let's play something different. So we've been playing Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion for over 2 years, probably. Just because when we sit down for a game, there's the two of us, I often want to play other things as well. So it's not just always this one. We're on scenario 19 now, and it just kicked our butts. So we didn't pass the scenario, and I'm like, oh my god. Oh my god. It was hard. So I don't know if we're gonna make it, but it's just very fun, very satisfying. Still, so but yeah, be ready to, some people just, okay, let's keep playing, and then they play one scenario after the other, after the other, after the other. But there's a lot of scenarios in this, so we've done that for a while. We've reached up to 19, and this is one that we'll pull out every once in a while, trying to kind of nip at it. But if we had played it with friends instead of just with my spouse, it would have been a lot harder to get through the scenario, so that's something to consider. In number 19 position, I have Raiders of the North Sea. I bought this one secondhand, but it was in shrink. And when I opened it and I'm looking at the component, it comes with metal coins, and I was so excited. This game is so neat. And it also has a very unique mechanism I hadn't come across before. It's a worker placement game, but each location that you can go and visit already has a worker on it. And some of them, like above the thing, has a worker on it. Some of them doesn't on the bottom. But what happens is you're going to place your worker to activate the location. And depending on the location, the color worker that can go there, it's either black, gray, or white. So be like, okay, well, this one can take a black and a gray, so I'm going to send my black worker there and activate that location, so I get to do the action. And then for the second action in your turn, because you do 2 action each turn, for the second one, you're going to pick up another worker. So the worker you pick up, then you activate that location. There's kind of a river across, and then you got the bottom portion and the top portion. So the bottom portion, you just can activate those locations by placing or picking up workers. In the top locations, above the river, this is when you go raiding. And in order to go raiding, you have some requirements you got to meet. And it'd be like, okay, well, if you go here, you can acquire all of this for raiding this location, but you need to raid with a gray meeple, so you got to make sure you have a gray meeple ready to raid, and then you would gain a white meeple from it. So okay, well that's okay. And then, but you need to have enough battle, so you have your cards of all the people that's on your crew, and they have their like strength, and then you roll a dice as well to see what you need to beat. So it's just very interesting. It's neat. So you're doing the bottom action, kind of threatening, building up your crew so that you can go and raid and hopefully be strong enough to be able to raid the location and gain what that location gives you. Beautiful game, very satisfying. It is such, and then that pick up a meeple, place down a meeple, like with the two actions you can activate. It is so unique. I love it. So that was my number 14, Raiders of the North Sea. In the number 13 position, I have Aeon's End. I had heard good things about this one, and I wanted to try it. This is a cooperative deck building battle game. And I was really liking the deck building game, and I played this one. Now this one is hard. We have lost this so many times, and I think won once, maybe twice. But it's so neat because different from regular deck building is once you have no cards in your draw pile, you take your discard pile, you do not shuffle, and you flip it over and you go through it again. So when you discard, you kind of want to sort your card the way you want it to go. And when you purchase cards, you want to purchase cards so that they interconnect with other ones, because sometimes they'll be like gems. So if you get 2 diamonds, it activates extra. So you're trying to keep the diamonds together, so there's a chance that they draw together. Now they may not. They may end up getting split up, but they may get together. So you want to try to build your hand so it comes that way. And then you have these different like spells that you can activate. But it takes time to activate a spell. So on your turn, you want to get it in the ready position. And once it's ready, you'll put the spell onto it so that it's ready. And then on your next turn, once it's ready, then you can go and activate the spell and you're attacking the monster, because there's a monster attacking your village, and every time it's going to attack, the village is going to take damage, and you're trying to kind of beat the monster before the village is destroyed. And then there's special abilities that you can activate. There's these gems you're collecting. There's cards that you can purchase and add into your deck. And then the turn order is super interesting as well. So depending on how many players, you have the number of the players in there, and then it's shuffled along with the bad guy. Then these cards are shuffled, then each turn be like, oh, okay, so number 1 goes first. I was like, oh, okay, so I'll go first, and then you flip over and say, oh, it's the bad guy's turn. It's like, oh, darn it, I was really hoping to do this before the bad guy went to go, and then you flip over, oh, bad guy goes the second time. It's like, but, so, and it changes, so you don't really have control of the turn order, because it depends on how the cards got shuffled and what comes up. But, so neat, such a fun game. Very, as I mentioned, very punishing. I have not won this very often, but it's neat, and there's different kind of scenarios, like there's different big boss monster you would go against, and then your cards change all the time. It's like Dominion with a card drawing, so you have different cards that are available each time. I love it. It's so good. That's Aeon's End. Then in my number 12 position, I have Bohnanza. And Bohnanza is just a simple card game. I'm surprised it made it this high, but it is such a well-designed game, and I really enjoy it. And every time we play it, it's just a ton of fun. So with this one, it's like a massive deck of cards, but each card has different beans on it. And then you'll have, coffee bean or stink bean or black-eyed beans, and there's all just these different things you have. And you have this little board in front of you, and there's 2 fields, and on your turn, you can build or plant in those 2 fields. So on your turn, you have your cards. You're going to take the one in the front and you're going to plant it. Now you can plant as many as you want. So if I have like 2 the same, I'm going to plant both of them onto my field. But you can't sort the cards at all. So I plant 2, then on my turn I would flip 2 cards, and then I kind of negotiate with everybody I'm trading these cards, whether I want to keep them to plant them, they don't go in my hand, they get planted, or if I want to trade them with somebody else. So maybe I have like coffee bean, I flipped another coffee bean, but there's a wax bean, and I really don't need the wax bean. So I was like, hey, does anybody want to trade me for this wax bean? It's like, and then it'll be like, and this really is a negotiation game. Be like, well, I don't know what else you're offering. And then you're looking at your hand. I was like, well, I have a black eye bean, which I don't really want to plant. And then I have another coffee bean. So I could offer, I'll sweeten the deal by adding a black eye bean to this wax bean. So two for the price of one. And it's like, oh, well, I really want the black eye bean. I don't know about the wax. Like, oh, it's a combo deal. You got to take both. And then I'm like, well, no, then I want, okay, fine, take the black eye bean because I want to be able to get rid of this out of my hand. Anyways, now I'm still going to be stuck with this wax bean. So it is just anything goes negotiation wise, and you're trying to clear the cards in your hand that you don't really need to try to build up the beans on your garden as much as possible, because on the bottom it has like, well, if you have two of this cards it's worth 1 point, or sometimes it could be if you have 5 of these cards it's worth 1 point, depending on how rare the bean is. But then if you have 7 it's worth 2 coins, but then if you build it up to 9 it's worth 3, so you're trying to build the grouping of beans so you can get more coins from it. And then at any time you can harvest your beans from your garden, and you just kind of say, well, I've reached 9, that gives me 3 coins, so I'll take all these 9, I keep 3 of them, flip them over because the back is coins, and these get discarded. And you go through the deck 3 times. Now that sounds long because the first turn going through the deck takes a bit of a while. But the next round, bunch of cards are coins now, so you're not going through as many in the third round through. Like, there's way more coins, so it goes very quick. Then at the end of the game is whoever's collected the most coins is the winner. Beautiful game. This is just like well made. It's so smooth and well made, and it's such a neat trading mechanism. I really love and enjoy playing Bohnanza, so that's why that's my number 12. And the last game for this series here, number 11, is Steampunk Rally. This is a racing game, and it's an engine building game, and what's really neat about it is you're actually building a machine to race as you play. So you start by drafting cards. And then you'll have 4 cards. You pick one to keep, and then you pass the rest, and then you look at this one. You keep one to keep, and so on. Now, each of these cards either going to have a piece of the machine that you can add to your contraption that you're creating to race, or you can discard it for the dice or the gear that is available, or there'll be some cards that have special ability that you can utilize for the special ability, or like there's different ways of these cards can be used. So you have to decide which one to keep and how you're going to use it. And then maybe you're adding it to your machine. Now the machine has like these gears, so each gear has to connect, like a connector has to connect in order to be able to build to it. And then it has different things on it. And then it'll require a dice to be placed to activate the machine. So maybe this one requires yellow dice. Yellow's for electricity. And then so for every 3 pips on your dice, your machine's going to move forward by 1. So ideally, you would want to have a dice that has rolled a 6 to put on there, because then it would move up by 2 times. So you would kind of go a little bit faster when this is a race. And then you're placing these dice, activating it. So there's the yellow dice for electricity, there's the blue dice for steam, and you have the red dice for combustion. So depending on the components you have in your machine, what's required. So you acquire the dice by discarding the cards, and then you roll the dice, and then you decide where to place everything. And then unless the machine has a place to store the dice are going to go away. So you're trying to utilize as much of it as possible. So then you've you've moved by so many space, so you move your machine. Maybe you've gone through rough terrain, so you're taking some engine damage, or so your machine's taking some damage because it's rattling so much. And now you've got some that'll kind of give you different ways to ride more smoothly. So maybe you fly over the rough terrains instead of ride over the rough terrain. Maybe you weren't able to do that and you just took the damage. Maybe you were able to reinforce your machine by placing some dice on reinforcement location. But if you weren't able to, and at the end of your trek, of this segment trek, you've got more damage and you were able to mitigate, you're going to lose pieces of your machine. So then it'd be like, okay, well, this is going to break off here. So let's say this breaks off, and you kind of decide which one you're going to break off. And it would break off anything that's connected to it if it's kind of reliant on that. If it has its own link to the cockpit, then you're good to keep it. But if it doesn't, then you could lose multiple pieces. So let's say this one breaks off. But if whatever you've got left, now the dice is on there, clutters your machine. You need to vent those out. So you can spend gears, and 1 gear will take out 2 pips. So if I have a 6, now it's a 4. And I would need to vent it 2 more times before I can clear that space to be able to put more dice onto it to activate some more. So maybe it's like, okay, well, I am going to break this piece off because it's so cluttered with dice and I don't have to worry about venting it. Or Duna's like trying to vent all these locations so that you can assign more dice to it. It is so satisfying. There's so much going on with it, but it's not a hard, complicated game, but it's so satisfying to play. And you're building this whole contraption, and it looks amazing, and you're adding all these cards and trying to race through it's fun. This is such a neat, fun game. They've come up with Steampunk Rally Fusion that introduces the fusion dice, and I don't know what that dice does because I've got a copy of that game, but I haven't got to play it yet. So that was my number 11, Steampunk Rally. If you want to check out on the Board Game Specialist, starting episode 50, we went through a top 50 games, so you can see what my list is on that. And that was the same one as this one. But then you can see what was made onto Carla's list as well. If we also, on Instagram, I have Mel's_boardgame_room. I am also on Facebook at Mel's Board Game Room. And my YouTube channel is Mel's Board Game Room. Bye, everybody.